Pope Lick Trestle. In the Fisherville neighborhood of Louisville, Kentucky, an active Norfolk Southern Railway bridge stretches across the forested banks of Pope Lick Creek, reaching a height of 90 feet above the shallow water below. This specific structure serves as the geographic heart of the region's most persistent urban legend, with local folklore identifying it as the primary domain of the creature known as the Pope Lick Monster. Because the legend is intrinsically tied to this physical location, the trestle attracts a consistent stream of visitors and amateur investigators who trespass onto the dangerous active railway. This has resulted in a well-documented history of serious injuries and fatalities as people misjudge the speed of approaching trains or become trapped on the high, narrow structure with no escape route. The trestle itself is a critical component of the legend's endurance, as its sheer height and industrial form create an intimidating focal point in the otherwise placid parkland. The structure's length, reported as 772 feet, means that anyone caught in the middle has a significant distance to cover before reaching safety, a fact that amplifies the perceived danger. Consequently, the setting functions as a self-perpetuating cycle of folklore. The eerie location inspires stories of a monster, and those stories in turn lure people into a verifiably hazardous situation. The sound of a train's horn can be distorted by the surrounding hills, making it difficult for trespassers to accurately judge its proximity or direction. The very real risk of the trestle becomes conflated with the supernatural threat of the monster, blurring the line between documented tragedy and local myth. The high number of recorded accidents and deaths at the site provides a grim, factual foundation for the monster's terrifying reputation. The Goatman. Accounts passed down through local tradition describe the Pope Lick monster as a grotesque cryptid, a hybrid creature that merges human, goat, and sometimes sheep-like characteristics into a single entity. The creature's lower body is consistently reported as having powerful, fur-covered legs resembling those of a goat, which support a disturbingly pale and deformed human torso and head, complete with horns. This specific combination of features creates a jarring figure that stands in stark contrast to the natural Kentucky landscape. Believers in the legend claim the monster employs supernatural methods to hunt its victims, using either a powerful form of hypnosis or the ability to perfectly mimic familiar voices to lure people onto the active railway trestle. In some variations of the tale, the creature carries a blood-stained axe, adding an element of direct, violent threat to the established danger of falling or being struck by a train. This detail suggests the monster is not merely a passive cause of accidents, but an active and malevolent predator seeking to harm those who enter its territory. The creature's most feared attribute, however, is its unblinking stare, a hypnotic gaze that reportedly transfixes victims, rendering them unable to move as a train approaches. This element provides a supernatural explanation for why so many victims were unable to escape the tracks in time. The consistent description of this terrifying hybrid across numerous retellings establishes a clear, monstrous identity. The horrifying appearance and predatory nature of the Goatman lead directly to questions about its creation, sparking numerous competing origin stories. Circus freaks' revenge. The most widely circulated origin story for the Pope Lick monster positions the creature as a tragic figure born from profound cruelty and a sudden catastrophe. This version of the legend begins with a traveling circus that is transporting its entire troupe by train across the very same Norfolk Southern trestle in the dead of night. Among the performers is a man with severe physical deformities, cruelly billed as the Goatman, who endures constant mistreatment from the circus operators and other performers. According to the tale, a powerful lightning strike hits the tracks during a violent thunderstorm, causing the circus train to derail catastrophically on the high bridge. In the ensuing chaos, the Goatman perishes along with many others, but his tormented spirit is said to have remained forever bound to the site of the tragedy that claimed his life. Fueled by a lifetime of abuse and the violent nature of his death, the Goatman's ghost vows eternal vengeance against the world that mocked and tormented him. His spirit, therefore, becomes the monstrous entity that now reputedly haunts the trestle, using its supernatural abilities to lure unsuspecting trespassers into the path of oncoming trains. This narrative follows a classic, vengeful ghost archetype, which is a common trope in American folklore, where a specific location becomes haunted by a traumatic event. The story transforms him from a victim into a predator, a tormented soul lashing out from beyond the grave. This popular tale of a circus tragedy provides a compelling supernatural explanation, but another competing origin story suggests a much darker, occult source for the creature: the satanic farmer. An alternate and significantly darker origin story offers a completely different explanation for the creature's existence, shifting the narrative from supernatural tragedy into the realm of occult horror. This version of the legend centers on a reclusive local farmer who, driven by an obsessive desire for immortality and immense power, begins to practice forbidden black magic in the isolated Kentucky hills. In his pursuit of eternal life, the farmer allegedly makes a pact with a powerful demonic entity, often identified specifically as Satan in many retellings of the tale. To seal this Faustian bargain, he performs a gruesome ritual that requires him to sacrifice his entire herd of goats, offering their lives in exchange for his own unholy reward. Instead of receiving a simple extension of his life, the farmer's physical body is hideously transformed, merging his human form with the very animals he sacrificed to complete the pact. He therefore becomes the monstrous Goatman hybrid, cursed to live forever but stripped of his humanity and now driven by a predatory malevolence. This origin portrays the creature not as a vengeful spirit seeking justice, but as a damned soul who willingly traded his humanity for power and now haunts the trestle as his eternal prison. This Faustian narrative, where a deal with the devil backfires, is a common warning in folklore against hubris and forbidden knowledge. Regardless of which origin story locals prefer, the compelling nature of the legend has directly led to real-world trespassing incidents, prompting official warnings and public safety campaigns. The 1988 film. In 1988, the local folklore surrounding the creature receives a significant boost when Louisville native and filmmaker Ron Schildknecht releases his short film, The Legend of the Pope Lick Monster. The film premieres to a sold-out crowd at the Uptown Theater in Louisville, demonstrating the powerful grip the story already holds on the community's imagination. Schildknecht's 16-minute production visually codifies the disparate oral traditions, presenting a tangible and frightening version of the Goatman for a modern audience. By bringing the monster to the screen, the film transforms an amorphous local tale into a concrete narrative, giving it a new level of perceived legitimacy and permanence within the regional culture. The release and subsequent popularity of the film directly lead to an increase in the trestle's notoriety, turning it from a local spooky spot into a must-visit destination for thrill seekers. Because the film explicitly links the monster's legend to the physical act of crossing the trestle, it inadvertently creates a dangerous challenge for its audience to attempt. This popularization dramatically increases the rate of trespassing incidents at the site, as viewers are inspired to visit the real-world location depicted so vividly in the production. Schildknecht himself has expressed regret over these unintended consequences, stating he never wanted to encourage people to risk their lives. The film therefore acts as a critical cultural amplifier, cementing the myth in the local psyche and drawing more people to the dangerous tracks. The film's wide distribution and cultural impact directly precede a new wave of dangerous trespassing, resulting in a series of highly publicized accidents and fatalities at the trestle. The deadly lure. According to the legend, the Pope Lick monster's primary method of attack is a form of psychological warfare, compelling its victims to walk out onto the most dangerous section of the railway trestle. The creature allegedly uses its hypnotic gaze or mimicked voices to draw people toward the center of the 772-foot-long structure, a point from which a safe retreat is nearly impossible. This specific lure is critical because the high, narrow bridge offers no walkway or safety platform, forcing anyone on it to balance on the railroad ties with a 90-foot drop on either side. Therefore, the legend presents a scenario where a supernatural influence places individuals in a situation of very real mechanical danger. Once a person is trapped on the trestle, the physics of an approaching train create an inescapable scenario, as the vibrations traveling through the steel rails are often the first and only warning of its approach. Trespassers frequently misinterpret this vibration, believing they have several minutes to escape, when in reality the train is moving too fast to allow for a safe retreat to either end of the bridge. By the time the locomotive comes into view, its speed and proximity make any action futile, as there is insufficient time to run the hundreds of feet to safety. Trains appear to move slower from a head-on perspective, a visual illusion that has proven fatal for many who hesitate on the tracks. This fatal combination of a deceptive lure and an inescapable physical trap has resulted in numerous documented deaths over the decades. Reality of the trestle. The physical characteristics of the Norfolk Southern trestle itself present a lethal combination of factors that are often more dangerous than any supernatural entity. The structure spans 772 feet across Pope Lick Creek and stands at an intimidating height of over 90 feet, a significant elevation that makes any fall potentially fatal. A critical design feature that contributes to the danger is the complete absence of any pedestrian walkway or safety deck alongside the tracks. This means anyone caught on the bridge is forced to navigate the uneven railroad ties, where a single misstep can result in a catastrophic fall even without a train present. Furthermore, the width of a standard freight train extends beyond the rails, leaving no space for a person to safely stand aside as it passes. This leaves only one option for escape, attempting to outrun the locomotive to either end of the bridge, a feat that is practically impossible given the train's speed and the trestle's considerable length. The true monster of Pope Lick, therefore, is not a mythical Goatman but a confluence of verifiable hazards, height, distance, and the unstoppable force of modern machinery. Railroad officials repeatedly state that a freight train can take over a mile to come to a complete stop, making any emergency braking for a trespasser entirely ineffective. The accumulation of these real-world dangers has led to a documented history of accidents, forcing officials to respond directly to the legend's deadly influence. Rochelle BAINTER. On April 23, 2016, the deadly influence of the Pope Lick legend results in a widely publicized tragedy when a tourist from Ohio is killed while searching for the monster. Rochelle BAINTER and her boyfriend traveled to Louisville specifically to investigate the folklore, making their way onto the dangerous railway trestle that afternoon. While walking across the structure, they are surprised by an approaching Norfolk Southern freight train, which leaves them with no time to reach the safety of either end. Unable to outrun the locomotive, BAINTER is struck and does not survive the impact or the subsequent 90-foot fall from the bridge. Her boyfriend narrowly avoids the same fate by clinging precariously to the side of the trestle, dangling by his arms from the railway ties as the entire train passes just inches above him. The incident gains national media attention precisely because the couple's presence on the tracks was directly motivated by the urban legend, a fact the surviving boyfriend confirmed to reporters. Coroner Jack Arnold of Jefferson County explicitly stated that the couple went to the trestle as part of a ghost hunt for the monster. The death of Rochelle BAINTER becomes the most definitive and tragic example of the real-world consequences of the folklore. This high-profile fatality forces local authorities and the railway company to escalate their efforts to prevent future tragedies at the location. Norfolk Southern fights back. In response to the consistent pattern of accidents and fatalities, Norfolk Southern, the corporation that owns and operates the active railway, has adopted a firm and public stance against the urban legend. The company repeatedly issues official statements to the media, making a clear distinction between folklore and fact, with messages like, "The monster is a story, the train is real." This public relations campaign is designed to strip the romanticism from the legend by focusing on the tangible, lethal danger posed by trespassing on an active freight line. Consequently, Norfolk Southern aggressively prosecutes all individuals caught on their property, working closely with Louisville Metro Police to enforce a zero-tolerance policy for anyone found near the trestle. This corporate policy places the railway company in the unusual position of being locked in a perpetual public safety war with a ghost story. Despite installing higher fencing, posting numerous prominent warning signs detailing the risks, and even supporting legislative efforts to increase penalties for trespassing, the legend's allure proves incredibly resilient. The company's official fact-based warnings must constantly compete with the compelling narrative of the Goatman, a battle that plays out every time a new visitor decides to test the myth for themselves. These efforts are also critical for the company from a liability standpoint, as they demonstrate a clear and consistent effort to prevent such incidents. The ongoing conflict between Norfolk Southern's safety campaign and the enduring power of folklore ensures the trestle remains a site of contention. Savannah Bridges. On May 26, 2019, the trestle claims another victim when 26-year-old Savannah Bridges dies after falling from the structure. Her death is particularly significant because it occurs in the absence of an approaching train, as reports confirm she simply lost her footing while walking on the uneven railroad ties. She subsequently falls approximately 90 feet to the ground below, a height from which survival is nearly impossible. This incident serves as irrefutable proof that the location itself is a death trap, independent of the railway's active use by Norfolk Southern. The circumstances surrounding her death underscore a critical point often lost in the sensationalism of the monster legend. The bridge's physical design is lethally unforgiving. Without the element of a speeding locomotive, the tragedy of Savannah Bridges isolates the inherent danger of the 90-foot drop and the treacherous footing of the tracks. The Jefferson County Coroner's Office officially ruled her death an accident resulting from the fall, not a train collision. This ongoing cycle of folklore-inspiring real-world tragedy cements the location's dark legacy in the public consciousness. The Fence of Futility. Following the highly publicized death of Rochelle BAINTER, authorities in 2016 erect an 8-foot-tall chain-link fence along the access points to the trestle in their most direct attempt to secure the site. This significant security measure is specifically designed to create a formidable physical barrier intended to deter the steady stream of thrill-seekers and amateur folklorists drawn to the location. Despite its imposing height and the clear, no trespassing signs affixed to it, the fence proves to be an almost immediate failure in its primary objective. Persistent trespassers quickly begin to cut holes in the chain link or find ways to climb over it, demonstrating a determined effort to access the forbidden tracks regardless of the new obstacle. This ongoing struggle between the authorities and trespassers highlights a fundamental truth about the Pope Lick legend. A physical barrier is ultimately no match for the power of a deeply ingrained myth. The perpetually damaged fence therefore becomes a symbol of the futility of trying to solve a cultural phenomenon with a purely logistical solution. For every person deterred by the fence, another seems to view it as part of the challenge, an additional layer of forbidden allure that makes reaching the trestle an even more compelling goal. The constant repairs inadvertently signal to the public that trespassing remains a persistent issue, which only reinforces the location's infamous reputation. The failure of this expensive security measure demonstrates that the true, enduring threat is not the trestle itself, but the story that continues to draw new visitors into its path. Ghost hunters and YouTubers. In the digital age, the Pope Lick legend thrives on video sharing platforms where ghost hunters and YouTubers document their illegal expeditions onto the trestle. These videos, often showing groups searching for paranormal evidence after dark, reach a global audience and transform the local tale into an internet phenomenon. The search for viral content therefore creates a dangerous feedback loop, as every new video showing someone trespassing directly inspires another group to attempt the same feat. This modern form of storytelling ensures the myth is not only preserved, but actively promoted to new generations who are often unaware of the location's deadly history. The promise of online fame and potential monetization provides a powerful incentive that often overshadows the well-documented dangers of the railway. This digital amplification ensures that despite official warnings and documented deaths, the story of the Pope Lick monster continues to evolve, finding new life and new potential victims online. Maryland's Goatman. Confusion frequently arises between the Pope Lick monster and another prominent cryptid, the Goatman of Maryland, which originates from an entirely separate regional folklore. This creature's legend centers on the rural roads of Prince George's County, particularly Fletchertown Road, where it reportedly stalks the dark woods. Unlike Kentucky's monster, which employs psychological lures to trap its victims on a trestle, the Maryland Goatman is depicted as a direct and violent aggressor. Local lore describes it as an axe-wielding creature that rushes from the forest to attack passing cars, a narrative that has terrified local teenagers for decades. This distinction is critical because it highlights two completely different mythologies, one based on a supernatural trap and the other on a direct roadside assault. The Maryland creature has its own unique origin stories, often tied to a scientific experiment gone wrong at the nearby Beltsville Agricultural Research Center, a narrative completely independent of any circus train or satanic farmer. The Maryland legend gained significant media traction after a 1971 newspaper article documented alleged sightings and violent encounters, cementing its place in local culture. Therefore, despite the similar names, these are two entirely separate cryptids, each with a unique mythology, modus operandi, and geographic footprint. The real monster. When all the folklore, eyewitness accounts, and viral videos are stripped away, the trestle is left with a documented and verifiable body count. The legend of the Pope Lick monster, originally a harmless ghost story, has itself become the primary danger, acting as a powerful lure that draws people into a deadly and unforgiving environment. While tales of a hypnotic stare or a vengeful circus freak provide a compelling narrative, the only confirmed killer at this location is the Norfolk Southern train, a £3 million machine that cannot stop in time for a person on the tracks. This stark reality transforms the horror from a supernatural threat into something far more tangible and preventable. The true monster of Pope Lick is not a Goatman hybrid carrying a bloody axe, but the fatal decision a person makes to ignore the fences, the warning signs, and the tragic history of those who came before them. Each death and serious injury at the site can be traced back to a conscious choice to trespass onto an active, high-speed railway line. It is this human element, the pursuit of a thrill, the desire to confirm a myth, or the need to prove one's bravery, that perpetuates the cycle of tragedy. The horror of the Pope Lick legend is not found in the folklore, but in the grim, factual choice that precedes every accident on the tracks. If you enjoyed this, I'm going to be posting a lot here. I would greatly appreciate it if you could subscribe. Thanks for watching.